The proof is in the pudding, and the pudding in this case is a football. Boom! Eat my goal! The goalie has got football pie all over his shirt.
Welcome to this episode of the Down the Pub podcast. On this episode, we welcome back Wanderers president Derek Martin. Gary was supposed to be joining us, but he started a big Twitter spat with half of Ottawa, it seems, after the game on Monday. So I think he's actually in hiding from Ollie Bassett. So welcome back to the show.
Uh-oh. I wouldn't have expected he to be the one to start a Twitter war.
Me either. I guess the emotions of the game on Monday got the better of him. So speaking of which, you're the person who started all this. What's a game like that for you? Like what the last minute winner and the emotions? What's it like for you?
Yeah, I have to apologize. I still don't have my voice back after screaming. I screamed mostly on our second goal, but then obviously on the third one, it was pretty special. So yeah, that was a great night. We've had two nights this year, the Forge game and this one, that were just, I think, as good as it gets in terms of drama and excitement and energy from the crowd. A night game, some weather issues. It's kind of got the whole everything's included. So that was a really cool night. It was a really fun experience to be a part of.
We were standing behind the goal in the patio, and when they scored, it went like a little bit flat, but then you could just feel it was like still a belief that we could go back up and score another one. And then when we did, like, I don't think I've ever seen such a swing. It was absolutely incredible. So
I don't know if there's a play. I don't know if there's 1 minute of time that better defines Zach Fernandez than that minute. He's been that kind of player since he got here. He's full of fire. He's full of, energy. He was fired up. He was pissed off. He was all of those things. And he just, I said to him after the game, I said, you took that upon yourself to will that goal into existence. And, to watch a young man do something like that is, it's pretty special. I think he transformed his career in that moment. And he did everything he had to do to get up to that point. But, that's, it all came together for him in a really, really special way. That was cool to see.
yeah, seeing them going over to 104 and basically lose his shit was pretty special, and that's why we love the game, right? It's just for those moments, like we kind of
sure.
we don't care if it's in the rain or if it's in the super hot weather. It's we live for those moments. So we're obviously nearing the end of the season. I think we've got 3 games left, 1 home game left. So how happy have you been with the way the season's gone for the club, both on the pitch and off it?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. I think if anything, it has gone so well that our own expectations probably got much higher than they should when we started to see, it coming together on the pitch as quickly as it did. I know I'm guilty of it. And, if I think back to, where we were at this point last year, we've come a long, long way. And, winning in sports is more than just collecting a number of good parts. It's there's a whole lot that goes into it. And I think, we're building something here really special. We've always, been working hard at building the off the pitch stuff, which I think is really special already. And now we've, and not to, I think a lot of the groundwork was laid in the first few years. We just didn't have whatever it was to kind of pull it all together. And it certainly feels like it's coming together. And by no means does that mean we're there yet. I think we're in a fight right now, which is the way it should be. You know, what a great thing it is for our league this year to have so many competitive teams. I think everybody playing well. It's not a matter of everybody playing poorly and kind of a race to the bottom. It's the opposite of a number of teams playing really well and having different periods of the season where they're on top, and then there's periods where each team has struggled. And here we are now with this very exciting final 3 weeks of the season where we were going through it today. We can finish second, and we could miss the playoffs still. It's crazy to think that with 3 games left, there's still that many different options or outcomes that are still in play for us.
Yeah, it's been incredible. As you said, like how close everything was. I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. There was like 4 points separating like the top 5 or 6 teams, which it's a testament to all the owners, I guess, that they're willing to go out and find the players. And I mean, from a league standpoint, how happy is everybody being with the way Vancouver have kind of started their existence?
Yeah, I think it's been great. Rob, friend, who's leading the Vancouver operation, he's one of the, smartest guys around the table when it comes to understanding the game of football. And, he proved it at Pacific with building a great team there and a great squad. And, I think he's well on his way to replicating that in Vancouver. They've gone very young this year, but they're playing, very well with those young guys, as well as a few strategic veterans that they've peppered in there. And I'm sure, that club is going to improve. And, they're already a tough game. We know we're in for a tough game this Saturday, regardless of where they are in the standings. They're going to play us hard, and they've got some real talent, especially up front, that we really have to prepare for and be ready for. So it's going to be a great game, and I think they'll continue to grow and do well, and next year they'll be a force to be reckoned with for sure.
So just before we get into talking a little bit about the stadium and things like that, obviously Joe Morelli went off injured last week, and there was an story of him heading back to Brazil with his kid on the plane. So can you kind of give us an update of what's happening, and kind of on a more positive note, like what it's been like having him back around the team and what he's actually brought in terms of presence?
Yeah, it's been great to have Zhao back. We never knew if we would be able to have him back. So to get him back and for him to come back and, as Zhao often does, write a storybook return in terms of the way he came back and scored goals and, all the great things that he can do. So it's been awesome to have him back. And yeah, he did, unfortunately, he did come up with an injury in the game before last, and it's a pretty severe one. So, we aren't sure yet if it's a season-ending injury or not. It's definitely a 3 to 6 week kind of injury, though. So, he's not going to be back anytime soon. If we make it through into the later rounds of the playoffs, there's a chance that he might be back. But Zhao's been pretty honest with everybody that he's a new father and a newly married man, and his wife and son were scheduled to fly home to Brazil this week. So since he's out and won't really be able to do anything here for the next month, he wanted to head back home with them and help them with their transition back to Brazil. So we let him go, and we'll hopefully be able to welcome him back before the end of the season.
Yeah, fingers crossed. So, obviously the big news for yourself has been the past week was your presentation to the Halifax Council. I guess my first question: were you nervous? Like it's kind of daunting, right?
No, I think at the end of the day, I've been living this for the last 7 years. So I didn't say anything in that presentation that I haven't believed for the last 7 years. I feel incredibly grateful to everybody that has helped us fulfill kind of the promises that we made. And, I started off, I think one of the first few slides was, bringing up the four commitments I made back when I made that first pitch for the pop-up stadium. And, it was a great process actually going through and preparing it and reminding myself of where we were 6 years ago and what we said we would do, and the fact that we've done every one of those things. And I set out on this adventure to, prove to people that the Wanderers grounds was a great community asset that was being neglected. I thought it deserved a chance to come back to life. I thought soccer was the right opportunity for Halifax to finally, have an outdoor sports and entertainment venue. And I think we've proven those thoughts to be correct. We average over well over 5,000 fans a game. We've injected life into the downtown core, into the city. We brought the Wanderers ground back to, I think, its rightful place as a key community gathering place. So I'm really proud of that, and I was happy to share that with the committee of counselors, and basically make my case to them that the time has come to finally solve this community stadium dilemma that has faced Halifax for as long as I've been here, and for decades before that. We've got the right model now, and we've got the right location. So it's time, I think, to do what the city should do, and match what it has in an indoor venue with the Scotiabank Center, with an outdoor venue at the Wanderers grounds. And we're happy to pay to contribute to it, and be a long-term tenant that enables its success over a long time. And I really hope that our plan uh, falls on ears of folks who appreciate we're being, transparent, we're being pragmatic, we're not asking for the moon, we're not trying to, build something, overbuild something that we don't think fits with the, area that we are and what we need. And all we can do now is, keep moving through the process, and see where we end up.
So I was mentioned obviously in the council, like the cost of living crisis and what's going on in the city. So why is now the time for you to pitch that idea to the city?
Well, I said this in the meeting. I don't know if there has ever been a time in human history when a government has said at the end of the year, we've paid everything and we've got a bunch of money left, so we're going to write a check to every citizen and give you guys some money back. The reality is, running a city, a growing city like Halifax, means there's a lot of pressure on the government to do a lot of different things. Last year we had a $979 million budget. I'm sure this year it'll be well over $1 billion in spending, that the municipality, not the province or the federal government, just the municipality is responsible for. So, it takes a lot of money to run a city, and there's always crises. Obviously, homelessness has become a very topical issue, as it should. It's a serious problem, but it's not a problem unique to Halifax, right? And for those of us who have come here from other places, lived in cities like Toronto, come from other places in the world, you realize that homelessness is a global issue. It's not a Halifax issue, and we can't just stop worrying about every other potential thing that has to be done in the city to just deal with one thing. We have to find some solutions that are unique to our city for that problem. It's complicated. It's going to take a lot of work between multi levels of government, but you keep going, right? And as you solve that problem, you've got to keep working on all the other things that are going on. And the reality is Halifax is growing at a crazy rate. We're adding 20,000 citizens every year. That's going to lead to lots of infrastructure challenges, roads, facilities, homelessness, housing, lots of things. And we're just one small piece of that. And I think a piece of public infrastructure like a stadium services the needs of a growing community. And people can disagree on that. That's their right. Every taxpayer has a right to have an opinion. They pay for that right. But it's my opinion that this is a needed piece of infrastructure, has been for a long, long time. And I think we've come up with a very responsible, reasonable solution to a problem that's existed for a long, long time.
You kind of you did mention in your presentation about the World Cup coming along and having a spot here that maybe we could entice a country here to be their base and stuff for that. And then somebody else has mentioned it being an aggressive timeline. But how important is it for the city to have something before that 2026 World Cup in place?
I think it's really important. I think it's a very realistic goal to, think about becoming a host of a World Cup participating team. You think about the impacts that could have from a tourism perspective, a business perspective in terms of trade and, relationships with a country. You think of somebody like Scotland, and where they're looking to come to get acclimatized to North America and start to do their prep. I think it's a reasonable opportunity. It would certainly help us for 2025 to be in the stadium and have something to invite some people to come look at and see what it's all about before they commit to come. But it's one piece. At the end of the day, I think the more important issue here is we are out of contract with the city for the pop-up stadium, and that means we're without a home. This is not a long-term viable solution at all. You guys, the fans, know that better than anybody. Um, it's I give credit to the people of Halifax and our fans in particular because they make do. Um, I think you've told your story of your buddy who dropped his phone in the
Yeah,
porta potty.
yeah.
I don't think he's the only one. So it's not a appropriate solution for a city our size. And we're a professional organization. We've proven it now. I can understand why at the beginning, and that's why I took the approach I did. I got it. We were new. The league was new. Why would anyone commit millions of dollars to build a stadium for a brand new team in a brand new league in a sport that had never been successful here at a professional level? I totally understood why that wouldn't fly. Um, but it's different now. We've survived a pandemic. We've proven over and over and over again that we can draw, that we can make the downtown a vibrant, happening place at a time of year when traditionally it hasn't been. Um, the Scotiabank Center is a fantastic facility. The Mooseheads, the Thunderbirds do a great job of drawing people, giving people entertainment, number one, and then drawing people into the downtown to spend money that, is our economic engine of the city. Whether you want to agree with that or not, there's a reason downtowns exist, and people can choose to live in Dartmouth or Bedford or Sackville or wherever they want to live. But these downtowns are where the economy gets moving to help sustain all of the services that you can get in all of those other areas where you want to live, to be quiet and get away. And it all has to work together. So I think it's just been one of those things where we took our time. We have sucked it up over the last 5 years. Pandemic certainly, didn't help our timeline, and it certainly wasn't appropriate, after 1 year and then being shut down for a year and a half of making this request then. But here we are now, and I think now is certainly in our minds, we need to get some direction from the city on, what their commitment is going to be back to us and back to all field sports. We I know a lot of fans were disappointed that we made the statement that we think it should be switched to artificial turf. We love the grass more than anybody else. Trust me, it's romantic, it's wonderful, the players enjoy it, it's special, it really is. But to make the commitment we're making to say that our mission as a club is to make our community stronger through sport, and then not be able to say it should be used, every day by as many people as possible, would be completely inconsistent, and we'd be talking out of both sides of our mouth. So what's important is that it's a facility that can be used by rugby teams, by soccer teams, by football teams, by anyone, and kept as a great location for us to still do what we do, but gain all that added benefit of being used 365 days a year by the entire community.
There definitely seemed to be before you did your presentation, the public participation part of it. There was somebody was there with a toonie to offer
Yes,
on top of
quite
what you
quite
were.
theatrical. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there was somebody else who was offering to get a license for a restaurant in the public gardens. But yeah, and obviously they're just doing that to make a point. But like how the big thing I seems to be coming from them is that the league is handing, or the city's handing over this part of our city's heritage to a private enterprise. So how do you allay their fears that there's no way that you guys want to purchase that land, you guys want to own that land, like it's that you're just there as tenants?
Well, listen, they're incredibly disingenuous as a group, unfortunately. Um, we aren't. They know the facts, but they're failing to share the facts because it doesn't fit with their argument. The reality is, we are not. The Wanderers grounds are not privatized. I pay to have every piece of infrastructure that exists at the Wanderers grounds there. I rent it or I bought it. So we've invested over $5 million so far in rent or purchases of all the things that you see there. Our agreement with the city allows us to leave it there. That's it. All we're allowed to do is put our stuff there and leave it up so that we don't have to pay 5 times as much as that to be moving it in and out all the time, like we would if we were a one-off event. And then in addition to that, we agree to pay rent every single time we host a game there. So this number that they've used of $2,500, $2,600, $2,800 of rent that we pay the city, that's just to use the patch of grass that we play the game on. They don't talk about the fact that we then pay for all the other things that are there. We're not, if the city wanted to put those in, we would happily pay them what we pay ourselves to bring it all in. But that's not the way the agreement works. Nobody was willing to do this at the time. No one was willing to put a stadium up. So we had to get creative to figure out a way to do it. And we pay for all of this infrastructure. We have it all there. It's not great. It's barely satisfactory, but it does the job, and we make do and we make it work. Um, but it's cost a lot of money to get something that's inferior. And all we're trying to say is, instead of us paying money every year to rent a bunch of stuff that is not very good, why not actually build something appropriate, and we can give you that money instead, and it can go towards paying down a kind of the old adage of renting a house versus buying a house. Do you want to pay down the mortgage to have something that's going to be better, or do you want to just have the money going away every month, and in our case every year, to have this rented facility that isn't really good enough? And it's too bad that we've kind of come up against this group's notions that we're somehow evil and ruining the Wanderers grounds and the Common. I I actually fundamentally disagree with their entire notion that we're somehow doing something wrong, because the Wanderers grounds has been a sports field with stands and welcoming fans since 1882. So if anything, I think we're actually returning it to the use that it was intended for and has been for almost 150 years. And the idea that it should be reverted back to just an open patch of grass that satisfies the needs of the people that live in that neighborhood, who maybe when they bought their house liked the fact that they could just, it was quiet and they could go walk their dog and have all of this public space for themselves. That's not what it was meant to do, and that's not what a city like Halifax should accept. I think it's a wonderful location for a public piece of land that serves the common good for citizens of Halifax. And we don't want it to be ours. It shouldn't be ours. It doesn't make any sense for it to be ours. No individual or private company could ever build a stadium and make it make sense if they weren't getting a bunch of free land around it to develop apartment buildings and condos and restaurants and all the other stuff that usually go into these types of deals. So it gets frustrating because it feels like we're, fighting against this coordinated campaign of misinformation when, in actuality, we've spent a lot of money and put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to just try to prove a point that this is still the best location to have a outdoor stadium in Halifax.
So when you hear like I think it was the chair of the council, or the committee saying, what about Kemp Road, Strawberry Hill? Like, do you feel like you're sometimes going around in circles that, you've kind of made your point of why we need a Wanderers grounds, and then everybody just keeps pitching up with it. Like, that's the first time I've heard Strawberry Hill and Kemp Road. Like, obviously St. Mary's was brought up. Like, do you feel like you're banging your head against the wall sometimes?
Well, if I didn't answer that question because I feel like the only answer I could have given was I just spent the last hour explaining why the Wanderers grounds was the location that made sense. And I always just come back to the fact that we took it upon ourselves to prove this at great cost, at great risk, because if this didn't work, nobody would be feeling bad for us and offering to help pay for, all the money that's been invested so far. So, you know, it's not like we're still coming in there with this pie in the sky idea of maybe this will work here. Like, we've proven it. You can see it. You can go to a game and see what it's like. And on a rainy post hurricane night, still see 5,000 people in there having a ball and having the time of their life. And I just I really hope that politics doesn't get in the way of really just paying attention to what we've been able to do and the arguments that we've made. And at the end of the day, there may be a very good reason not to do this, but it shouldn't be because they don't think it's the right location, because it obviously is.
Yeah, it's as I said, like that was the first time I've heard that location, and anybody who's ever gone down the Windsor Street Junction will know that that's really not going to work. So,
The other thing that's interesting is, we talk about the housing crisis in Halifax, and I the Wanderers grounds, because of its nature and the fact that it is part of the common, it couldn't be developed into housing. So, those other areas can't. So, that's another part of this argument that I find interesting that people conveniently maybe leave out or forget. But why wouldn't this? I don't know what else the Wanderers grounds could ever be used for other than this,
yeah,
right? So when you think about other locations, let's really develop those to, take care of the housing issue that we have in the city. But I don't think you're going to ever see a proposal that says we're going to put up a bunch of condos and apartment buildings on the Wanderers grounds. So if it's not going to be used for that, then why not this?
that makes all sense. Like, if it goes back to where it was, you had the pictures of what it was before, and it was just a piece of waste ground that was doing nobody any good. Nobody could use it for anything. Like, I mean, if you try to play football on that or play rugby on that, you were going to get a serious injury. So,
Yeah, you got me going now, so I'll keep going. But the argument that it was being used by these amateur sports groups is completely ridiculous. Like, it was not being used by the amateur sports groups. Citadel High School could not use it for football because it was so bad. And because it was run like any other city field, if it rained and was shut down, they couldn't practice or they couldn't play a game. So they had stopped using it entirely. Soccer teams could not use it. The rugby teams had stopped using it. So, it was being used by, a recreational ultimate frisbee league, which is all good, that they were using it, but they were using it because it was available because no one else wanted it. That's why they were using it. And, the idea that we somehow took it away. Every minor sports organization in the city signed letters of support for our project. To try to make it sound like the Friends of the Commons are, speaking on behalf of the minor sport community is quite a stretch.
big time. So my last question on this before we get into some listener questions. This is another thing that seems to always spin its head around. Somebody had mentioned, I think it was Tim out here, whatever his name is, about the CFL again. And it's like there seems to be this thing that the CFL is going to come to our city and turn us into this big time American city because we're going to have a pro football team in the city and stuff like that. But has there been discussions between the Wanderers and the CFL about a ground share? Like, do you know football? Like, I know you played it and stuff like that. Like, and we obviously had the game of St. Mary's. Like, do you think CFL is viable in the city to ground share with the Halifax Wanderers?
Right now, no. I think, and I've said this for a long time, and I'm not changing my tune. I'm a football guy. I'm a big football fan. I was at Touchdown Atlantic. Obviously, in our league, we have tons of partners with Forge and Valor who are also run by CFL teams. So there's not this big divide between us or, any animosity. I think at the end of the day, the Wanderers grounds would make a great location for a CFL team. The work we've done in the way we propose this to have, 8,500 seats to start with the ability to expand the other half of the stadium down the road to get it closer to, 14 or 15,000 seats. That potentially could work for CFL, but I don't think we're there yet. And I think a touchdown Atlantic game every year at a new refurbished stadium at the Wanderers grounds could be a great test to build up some momentum and to continue growing the sport here. I think as a football guy, my kids play, my two sons play high school football for Citadel and around it all the time. It's football still has a long way to go at the grassroots level in Halifax to get to the point where it is in Ontario. I grew up in Hamilton. You played minor football, you were part of minor football leagues, teams. Everybody played high school football. It was a big deal. That's not the way it is here yet, and maybe it gets there. And I wouldn't want to close the door on it. But right now, today, it's not viable. And it's a few years away, I think, from being something we should be really considering and talking about.
Yep, I totally agree. I think for what the Wanderers are right now, like 8,500, I think is a good goal to go for. And then obviously we've got the modular aspect of this, which how would that work then to increase the capacity over time?
So what we proposed for this first phase was basically replacing the two metal grandstands that we rent. So the kitchen grandstand and then that kind of main 101 to 106 or 107, sorry. Those two pieces of rented infrastructure would be taken away, and then we would put in a L-shaped permanent modular grandstand with a roof. And by doing that, we gain an extra 2,000 seats. We would leave the other two sides, which are the south and west sides, with the shipping containers that are there now. In phase one, we leave those. We've already invested in those. We would contribute that to the project and just say, okay, great, take this, this stays, off we go. And then those are the two sides that down the road, if in 3, 4, 5 years, you say, okay, geez, we've already outgrown the 8,500. We're sold out every single game, and it's hard for people to get tickets. And there's interest from a CFL team or someone else. Then all of a sudden, you can say, okay, if we remove those two sides with the shipping containers, you can add equal sized grandstands that are on the other two sides and double, in essence, double your capacity and get you up into that 14 or 15,000 person range. So, that would be the basic plan that allows us to still take advantage of the footprint that we have, which is quite tight, but that's also kind of the charm of it,
Yep.
right? It is tight, but that means you maximize every inch, and it's there's nothing wrong with rubbing shoulders with the fan next to you. It's all part of the fun. And then we can go from there. So that's how we would eventually get there when the time came.
Now, I'm sure you probably had most Wanderers fans sold on the fact that there's going to be a roof somewhere. So,
Yeah, especially after this year.
yeah.
Yeah, this has been the worst. I should have been knocking on wood the last few years because I would get asked about what do you do in the rain? Oh, it doesn't rain too much. And then this year we've been hammered.
Yeah. So just getting into our listener questions here. We had a question from Thomas Hewitt. What was the process of creating the renders and idea of the new stadium / surrounding area?
Well, the process, it took a lot of work and a lot of conversations. So we've met numerous times with our neighbors, the Lawn Bowling Club and the Halifax Lancers, the horse riding folks. There's also a proposal from the Friends of the Public Gardens to take out the greenhouses that are located there on Sackville Street that most people walk by on their way to the stadium, and definitely need to be replaced. So replace those with a new, I think they call it a horticultural center, but basically a giant greenhouse that people could walk through and become a nice piece of infrastructure as well for that area. So we spent a lot of time talking to them, understanding what their needs were, trying to fit everything, like kind of doing a puzzle, trying to fit everything in. And if we move this over here, how do we fit, this over here that we might need? We met with a few different planners that helped us think about things we might not usually think about in terms of access roads and, deliveries and parking and just where things need to go. We worked with Bear, which is the company that we have been talking to about building the modular stadium. They provided us with a ton of really great renderings themselves, as well as diagrams, schematics that we could use to build out this piece. And then, a really great story. But there was a young guy named Ben who came to see me a couple years ago, who had done his thesis in university on a stadium at the Wanderers grounds. And he just wanted to come share it with me. And I think he was just very proud of what the work he had done. And he shared all his materials with me, and I thought they were great. And we stayed in touch, and he now works for an architecture firm here in the city called Fathom. And when we knew we were ready to kind of move to this next step of having some renderings done, I reached out to Ben and said, "Hey, why don't you help us out here, and we'll pay you guys to help us create some beautiful renderings of what we're all trying to build." And he was awesome. He worked his butt off under a really tight timeline to try to bring it all together, and he produced the images that we released during the presentation and are now on our website.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
That's like a Halifax story. You know what I mean? Like, it's just someone just reached out to you, kept in touch with them, and like they were able to help you out with that. I love it. Next question is from CB Keeper Guy. Since the Saskatchewan bid seems to be on hold or dead, are there any other cities who realistically are going to come on board on the horizon?
Yes, absolutely. There are a number of cities in the mix right now. I think we learned a little bit, obviously, from the Saskatchewan experience. And, listen, at the end of the day, that was, a statement was made about trying to help the group that was trying to push that forward, because that group felt a statement from the league would help them. At the end of the day, it's too bad that it didn't work out. But, as we're experiencing here in Halifax, these are complicated things to try to have built. Stadiums are complicated things to get built. And they take a lot of work and a lot of care. So we do have a number of cities right now that are in the mix on expansion. No, I'm not gonna give away today. I'll get in trouble. But I think we're very confident as an ownership group that this league has lots of growth opportunity still to be realized. And I think with 2026 on the horizon, we'll see a lot of movement before the World Cup, and then probably equally as much movement after the World Cup, in seeing this league grow from 8 to 10 to 12 teams in not a long period of time.
Love it. You did have a follow-up question. Onions or no onions on your donairs? Sorry.
I love onions.
Okay, there we go.
So once you've gone down the Donair road, the last thing you need to worry about is how onions make
You're already so far gone. You don't need to worry about
it. Yeah, you're all in.
So this one's from Spen Pearson. So if we make the playoffs and we have an away playoff match, would you look to put a game on a big screen at the Wanderers grounds?
What do you think?
I can't see you doing it, to be honest.
We would absolutely do that. Yes. I think we were I don't know if anybody else did it during COVID, but we did it for the Island Games, and those were a lot of fun. Those viewing parties we did for those matches, and we would certainly want to do something to bring our fans together in a fun way and help cheer the key team on, and let them feel the energy wherever they are, coming hopefully right through the camera on the other end to will them on to victory.
Love it. That was like one of my favorite memories of the Island Games was getting to watch
Yeah.
the final at the Wanderers ground. So, Chris Searle, what's changed the most in your day-to-day operations with the club? And if nothing has changed, what have you learned in these 5 years to help generate consistency and stay motivated?
Yeah. Good question. Um, well, I've learned a lot, obviously. I think, personally, um, I and I don't think anyone would say I'm not still this to a degree, but I was quite a micromanager to start, and I have definitely learned, and also being shown by my great team around me that I don't have to micromanage them as much. And that's gotten much better, I think, around being able to focus more on the big issues. The stadium obviously being a core one for the future of our club here in Halifax. That's really the issue that takes up the majority of my time at this stage. I love the marketing side of this. I love the branding side of how do we grow and become more and more relevant in the city. That's really, I think, what gives me energy every day, is to think about those things and to work on them. But I'm very fortunate to have a great team of people that have really earned my trust to let them do their thing, and kind of just stick my nose in every once in a while, of course, to see what's going on and offer some help and some advice, and the odd time change course, but most of the time I'm just working with them to help support their ideas and their vision for how we keep growing this great team.
Love it. So speaking of employees, a former employee, Halifax Dave,
Okay.
have you got past 5 juggles with a soccer ball yet?
I I think I could, but I haven't yet. Yeah,
Practice makes perfect, my friend.
I need to practice more.
And does Fernando chirp you more at meetings than Ottawa fans do to Halifax fans?
Listen, Fernando is one of the nicest people I've ever met. I have a lot of time for Fernando. I think he's doing a great job in Ottawa. I get a kick out of it. I think it's great that our fans have dialogue and go at each other. I think it's good for the league. I think it's great that Ottawa has done such an awesome job to go from an expansion team where they were maybe struggling a little bit to get people out to having a championship game in their home venue and getting 15,000 fans, and obviously building a very passionate fan base. I think it's awesome. And what I wish is we had 8 of those fan bases across the league that you guys could get into arguments with online and have your little Twitter fights. And that's what we need, right? We need everybody to care as much as the Halifax fans care and the Ottawa fans care. And when we get there, that'll be a great thing. But yeah, no, Fernando's awesome. I wish those guys all the luck in the world, except when they play us. And I will say there's no team I enjoy beating more than Ottawa. So you can take that.
Most of the chirps that we just tend to see online from Ottawa fans is about our stadium and the fact that we use porta potties with no running water, and we've got like fake stands basically. So the fact that you're trying to fix that makes me appreciate it even more. So This one's from Denton, who actually gave a nice little speech, I guess, before you went into your person. So what's the worst advice you've gotten on how to run a club?
I can't think of any bad advice I've gotten. I must say there aren't a lot of people to ask advice from. Um, so, that's been, one of the challenges in all of this is we're, a startup league and we're a startup club. And, I think it's been a lot of trial and error. I am a huge fan in my business and in my life of, trying and doing things, and failing is okay as long as you learn something from it and, do better the next time. So I don't think there's been any kind of, bad advice that I listened to and did. I think, if anything, I've gotten some good advice I didn't listen to, um, around staying off of social media. I think I've made some mistakes being too engaged, but overall, it's been a really amazing process. And in my professional career and in my personal life, it's been a real joy over the last 5 years, living and breathing this. And I feel like we're certainly in a much better position now than we were 5 years ago in terms of what we know and what we know what not to do. But we're going to keep trying. We're going to keep experimenting. We're going to keep trying new things. And some will work and some won't. And we'll hopefully just through trial and error keep making it better and better.
So the football community as a whole, like, are they accessible? Like obviously we had the under 23 games against Holstein Kiel from Germany, and we had I think Kieran Baska went to Coventry at one stage and stuff like that. So like are other teams from other leagues and countries, like, are they open to helping you out and giving you advice if you need it?
Yeah, I think most fans in Canada would be surprised at how interested the rest of the world is in the CPL and in what we're trying to build. And there's, obviously, in some cases, centuries of history in this sport in, European countries and in some other places. So to be able to start something brand new and not maybe make some mistakes that have been made in the past, that or things that are inescapable just because of the way they were structured and built, I think is really fascinating to a lot of old world, I guess you would call it, soccer people. And we've got some relationships with companies like Macron, that enable us to go to, we every year they invite us to their annual event they have, where every club that's a club of Macrons is there. So you get to sit at dinner with folks that manage clubs in La Liga and clubs in Serie A and clubs, and you get to have these conversations about interesting topics. And they're fascinated to ask us things as much as we're fascinated to ask them about things they've already experienced. And it's just really great opportunity to learn from one another and to grow. And I think you're seeing it now with some of the transfers coming out of our league. People are um, really interested in what Canada has to offer. And, when you produce a player like Alfonso Davies, it gets the world's attention. And, I really hope that I think we've got a couple players right now that have a chance
Yep.
to move on to bigger and better things, which is a-okay, and I think everybody's got to understand that. Like, we're excited for a guy like Dan to come to Halifax, give us everything he's got, put his heart and soul into every single game, bleed for our club and play his ass off. And if that earns him the chance to move up, we're going to be so excited and happy for him. And that's what this league is all about, and it's what I think each club should be about. Is we certainly want the best from them when they're here, and then we only want the best for them when they're ready to move on from us. And I really hope we finally get that this year. And I think a guy like Dan or a guy like Zach, they have great. They're going to have some great opportunities, and we'll be cheering for them as loud as we possibly can.
And I think the fans feel the same too. It's like we all know that we're kind of just starting out, and to see people, it's a sign of any league that's becoming a good league to see players move on to the bigger
Yeah,
leagues and stuff. So it's all
listen,
part of the game.
unless you're Tottenham, right, and you're at the top of the pecking order of football, every team is a select team, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's just the reality of this being such a big global game where teams and leagues that are much higher stature than us are selling players on every year, and that's just the reality of being in this big ecosystem.
So the next one's from good friend Carlos. Are we going to see more renderings of what the inside of the stadium will look? And is there any flight plans if we do make it to the playoffs? Because I know we were going to have the party plane and that kind of fell through. So
Uh, yes. So, yes, we can share some more. We can probably add some more photos and renderings to our website. We do have some renderings from Bear of what the interior would look like, and it's quite nice. And, again, especially considering what we have now, it looks really nice. So yes, we'll commit to get those up and share them as time goes on. It's funny you mentioned the plane. I actually brought that up in the office today, and I almost got shot because I don't know if people can appreciate what goes into announcing you're going to do a plane ride, taking people's money, then having the airline cancel the flight on you and having to refund everybody's money. But it's not an easy thing to work through. But I did suggest it again today, and I think a couple people almost quit. So I might have to keep working on that one over the next couple of weeks. But if we have an amazing viewing party, I don't think anybody's going to want to
yeah,
leave Halifax anyway. That's going to be a better place to be.
yeah, I'm fine with either one of those options. This one's from Coop. With the success of the Wanderers and how Vancouver has approached things with the temporary stadium, do you think there are lessons learned and important points to be made when trying to consider expansion? And with the league having heads being a combination of owners, has there been discussions or a blueprint, so to speak, on the best or possibly right way to do things when faced with a lack of a stadium, and things like that?
Well, yeah, we all talk, and we've got a great commissioner in Mark Noonan who is kind of leading us through this phase of expansion and interesting discussions around new markets and new places to go. I think the reality is every situation is different, right? Like Halifax is very unique in that we have had this decades long debate going on around a stadium, around the CFL, around what could work. Our growth over the last 10 years has been astronomical. We have this amazing location in the heart of the city that was a former stadium that had fallen into disrepair that was available again. Like that doesn't exist in every city. All of those factors. So I think every situation is a bit different, and you can see that in our teams now when you look around the league. And Vancouver, made a decision to pick the location that they picked. So they worked with the municipality to build a stadium and have infrastructure there. There's an arena right beside it that would be similar to our Scotiabank Center. They've got some great synergies between those two buildings, so they've got their own unique situation. Pacific, had a great stadium in Starlight in that was shared with the Rugby Canada, and they were willing to make an investment, and that worked out interesting. Calgary, were able to build their own stadium on their own piece of property at Spruce Meadows. That's this completely unique, different environment that exists anywhere else in Canada. Like I've been to Spruce Meadows. It's really really special and different, and it works for them, right? Winnipeg, Hamilton, CFL teams, big, gigantic, beautiful, stadiums. they have their own challenges then because the stadium's too big and too nice, and it isn't. We're not quite caught up to it yet at a CPL level. So we have all these kind of interesting different situations. So I don't think it's as simple as saying one size fits all and every city should do what we did. Um, I do think a modular, temporary prove it first and then convince the powers that be it's a worthwhile investment is a logical realistic approach for some places. And we've had some conversations already with some cities that are interested in that model, and we'll happily share our experience with them and try to help them as they move through that. But there's going to be some other places where that's not necessary, and it's maybe a stadium is ready to be built through some other partnership, and they're looking for another tenant, and a soccer team can move in and help make it all work. So it's really it's again just a not a one size fits all solution. It's really has to be specific to each market, each city, and then equally to each ownership group, which I think sometimes I know fans don't like to support owners, or it's about the club and it's not about the person, and they can be punching bags sometimes when things don't go right. But at the end of the day, there's people putting up significant amounts of money to chase this dream. And of course, it's a business. And of course, one day there may be something in it for them, but it doesn't take away from the fact that there's some significant risk up front. So when you put in that amount of money and you take that risk, you earn the right to, make your decision on how you want to, set it up and get started. And, that's up to each individual and each situation.
So Gary had asked me to ask you, because normally on the show when we have players, we ask them to name their five-a-side team. He asked me to ask you to pick your five-a-side team from the players that have played for the Wanderers for like the last 5 years. I don't think it's fair to make you do that. But he did have a follow-up of which player from the last 5 years would you love to go out for a beer with?
Well, I try not to go out for beers with any of them because they don't want me there. Who, you know what? I'd have to go back to the name that jumps out at me is Peter.
Nice.
I think I'd have to say Peter. Peter was a great player for us. One of our original Wanderers, a great guy. Had the Cape Breton connection. Was a man about town. Always enjoyed every conversation I ever had with him. I wish him only the best wherever his career takes him. And it'd be great to catch up with him over a beer at some point. I hope he comes back to the city and comes to a game, and I'd love to catch up and have a beer with him and see how life's going.
Nice. Yeah, I follow him on Insta. He's like a personal trainer now. He's got his own business. He's doing all right. I think he's gonna be good. Yeah. And I'm sure he knows that he's always welcome back here. He's a big fan favorite. So
of course,
yeah. So Derek, it's been amazing catching up again. I really appreciate that you do these every couple of months to kind of let people know what's happening. Obviously, we had the big news with the stadium presentation and stuff like that. So I appreciate you kind of answering a few questions on that, and obviously being open and honest with all the listener questions too. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for doing what you guys do to talk about the team and the league. And you guys have started a whole industry of podcasts now, across the country. So kudos to you guys to keep it going. And I think it's great. It's great. This sometimes I know people get sensitive and we get upset with things sometimes, but at the end of the day, we're talking about a sport that's gives people some joy and some escapism from the realities of day to day. It's all good. It's all good.
I'm going to start charging people a franchise fee and see how we make out. So
good luck. Good luck with that. Yeah.
Thanks a million, Derek.
Folks, please. Right foot, please. Time to drink up, folks. Get out. Out to foot.